I just want to welcome you to the Transition Podcast, man. I'm super excited to have you. I've been following you, and the whole point of the Transition Podcast was I play minor league baseball. We do have two things in common, and then the third one is that you made it and I didn't. But I was a 42nd round draft pick. You were a 50th. I was at a JUCO. Then I went in the 16th round. Signed with the White Sox. Played with the White Sox for a little while. I saw you were a 19th round draft pick. You were at UNLV. Then I played minor league baseball and whatnot. And then when my baseball career came to an end, I was 24, and I was being sent back to extended spring training. I had just had a great spring training. They didn't know what they were going to do with me and whatnot. And long story short, I had my degree. I knew what I wanted to do in life. And I just pretty much walked away from the game. And I thought I was ready, Xavier, but that's when life kind of hit me like a bag of bricks. So I went through a lot of anxiety. I went through a little bit of depression, and I had to re-identify myself. And, thank God 15 years later, my business partners and I have built an amazing insurance company. That's what we do now. And little did I know how much baseball had prepared me for business and for life. But there was a rough 5 years there, man. So I'm just trying to spread a message of athletes like yourself, people who played. I love that you're transitioning. You're involved in ESPN. You seem to have a very entrepreneur spirit. And the message is just to how can we help kids understand that, baseball is great, but it's not who they are. It's not their identity. There's more to life than just baseball, as you know.
Right.
And there's no doubt that it's amazing to play and how it prepares you. But I think we're always all in transition. And that's it, man. So welcome to the podcast. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you were born, and a little bit about Xavier Scruggs.
No, I appreciate you for having me first and foremost, man. I've been keeping up with what you guys have been doing and immediately attracted to, just the messaging first and foremost, because like you said, we're always in a transition. And that was something that my parents ingrained in me as a young athlete, as a young student. Going back to San Diego, Poway, California is where I grew up, played baseball, basketball, football, played all the sports. But I started noticing around that high school stage, the basketball players getting way too tall for me. The football players getting way too strong. So I just stuck to baseball, where I know I could just hit and kind of jog around the bases. So that was something that I was more focused on. But it gave me an opportunity. That's what baseball has given me. It's given me an opportunity for education. And that was the focus growing up. My parents were always like, hey, we want you to worry about getting your education, because we don't know how long sports last. We don't know how long baseball will last, but an education lasts forever. And both my parents went to 4-year universities, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. So for me to grow up and seeing that, and they used to take me back to their school very often, at least once a year, I got to see firsthand, like, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to be on a university one day. Like, not only do I want to play sports, but I want to have that experience. So that was something that was always extremely important to me. I got drafted out of high school, but my focus was immediately going to college. And so I'm very blessed that baseball gave me an opportunity to do that. So I turned that down and luckily was able to go to UNLV Las Vegas is where I started my college career.
That's amazing. And you remind me a little bit about something that I had Nolan Carroll on the podcast. Nolan Carroll was a defensive back with the Eagles. I'm not sure he played with the Dolphins for a while. Yeah, and he's a very educated guy, super smart guy. And you remind me a little bit about him with what you just said, where his parents were very involved in his life and they were always talking to Nolan about education. And it goes to show you, Xavier, how that seed was planted into you as a young child. And it's probably no coincidence as to why your thought patterns and the direction that your parents set you in has a lot to do probably with your success. And I think us as parents, that's our responsibility to our children is to always make sure that we're navigating them as best we can. But it seems like mom and dad did a hell of a job with you. So that's a blessing. That's amazing.
No, and it's a blessing because I know a lot of people don't have, parents in their life. A lot of people don't have fatherly figures. A lot of people don't have the mentors. So, I don't take that for granted. And I understand that I was blessed to have that opportunity. So that was big for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. My parents were divorced. I didn't have mom and dad together. And I can tell you that that definitely presented challenges for me and for other children as well. And I've got 2 kids and my wife now, and it's just unbelievable to see, what normalcy and a healthy emotional environment looks like. And
right.
For me, I did have, my dad was always around. He never abandoned me, nothing like that, or my mom neither. But it wasn't, when you don't have 2 parents at home, Xavier, it's hard, because doing this parenting job at 50%, it's like anything else. You're just not as good at it.
Right.
But anyhow, so you went on, you played baseball at UNLV. You get drafted. Let's talk a little bit about the minor leagues and your path there. What was that like?
Yeah, no, I got drafted in 2008 by the Cardinals in the 19th round. And man, I was just eager to get to work. I knew that, I look up and I see Albert Pujols is the first baseman in the big leagues. And I'm like, I got a lot of work to do, man. And I think that's one thing that kind of helps separate at least my focus along with some of the other guys is because, and this too, in the minor leagues, guys are always looking up and who's in front of me, looking down, who's behind me, coming to try to catch me. So my focus was really tunnel vision. And I just said, I need to get myself better every single day. And that took me 7 years before I got to the big leagues. And that was something that was, mentally draining too, because you look throughout those years and you see certain guys getting to the big leagues that you may feel you're better than. And then also you look at guys back home and some of your friends that are going on, getting good jobs, starting their own professions. They're starting to make money and you're not making any money in the minor leagues. So
I still got my first paycheck. $343, man.
Man, and it just reminds you of, you're grinding for something for a long period of time to get to where you want to be. And it's not all about the paycheck because you're not making any money in the big league. So it's about, for me, it was about knowing that I was able to catch that dream. And I tell people this all the time is, most people don't even have an opportunity to even strive for their dream. They can dream something, but they may not even have the opportunity to go get it. And then I had the opportunity to go get the dream. So I was like, you know what? I'm not letting this go by. I'm going to go get the dream and think about the small percentage of people that even reach their dreams. That's the crazy thing to me is like only a certain amount get to actually chase that dream. And then to get to that dream is even crazier. So for me, I was always motivated by that. And when I got the opportunity to get to the big leagues, that's when I kind of said to myself, okay, this is a part of the dream, but what's more? Like, how do I go get more? And for me, it started in the minor leagues and understanding, okay, if this is something that I'm going to be doing, if I'm going to be working towards something, I need to start thinking about other things outside of baseball too, because I know it took me 7 years to get there. Baseball doesn't last forever. And I told you, my parents reminded me of that all the time. So I was always thinking, okay, how can I use this platform of baseball and help propel me to things outside of baseball? So whether that be diving into the community during the minor leagues, whether that be, going and visiting hospitals and meeting different types of people within the organization, I was always thinking about building those relationships that would help me outside of the game. So minor leagues was just an area where I could help focus that as well as working to get to the big leagues.
And that's amazing. The maturity that you had in the minor leagues is tremendous. I'll be honest with you, I didn't have that mindset when I was playing in the minor leagues. I was so fixated on baseball, right? And, making sure that I was getting, X amount of cuts in the day. And I was so focused on the physical aspect of the game that I really neglected the mindset part of the game. And it dawned on me later on in my life where I said to myself, you know what? Like, I had physical talent. Like, if you gave me a bat today, I feel like I can hit batting practice. And, back then you could have put me in a major league stadium to hit BP and you probably would think, okay, this guy's a big leaguer, right? But I wasn't. And I wasn't not because I didn't have the physical ability to be a big leaguer. I wasn't because I didn't have the mindset of a big leaguer. And I feel that I have that now in my life and in my career. And that's why we've been able to build what we've built. But one of the things that I stress and I focus on specifically on kids that are, at the college level, at the high school, collegiate level, at the high school level they want to move forward is it's great that you're a great physical player, but at the end of the day, the reason why there's 750 major leaguers is because those are the top 750 major leaguers for the most part, in my opinion, the top mental people. I'm not saying that there's a couple guys I'm sure you can say, dude, they're just there because they're just that physically, they're just an alien, right? Like they're just that good. But eventually it catches up to them, Xavier, right? That mindset breaks down and the tough guy, the guy with the better mindset ends up having probably a longer and better career. But it just goes to show you how mental preparation is so important. And the fact that you were able to think about that at such a young age is amazing. And again, kudos to your parents for always reminding you that the game, God forbid you were always you could have been, running on the first base line and torn your Achilles, and that's the end of your career, which happened to a good buddy of mine, 2nd round pick with the Rangers. And it literally ended his career. And I have friends of mine. I have 2 guys that were, 1st round picks, and mentally, they could never, from what I understand, they were never able to. They felt like they didn't belong. It's what they both told me, which is an interesting statement from 2 guys that were 1st round picks. That you get to a certain place and you feel like you don't belong.
Right.
But you also mentioned that you played a bunch of sports, and I want to hit on this because one of the things, like my son played his first little league baseball game yesterday, kid pitch wise, and awesome. We lost the game, but there are a bunch of young kids playing 9U and whatnot. But we've got a couple kids that are athletic, right? And then you've got these kids that just play baseball 365 days a year. That's all they do. And then they kind of burn out. I, for a fact, think I saw some highlights of you. I may have seen you play once, a little bit on TV, but you were an athlete. So let's talk a little bit about that as well. Did playing other sports help your baseball game as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think, not just physically, but also mentally, right? Playing football, playing basketball, and I think one of the big things is, training to be an athlete allows you to be, that much more ahead and all around when it comes to the body. And I think so much mentally, but then also just what you're able to do, what your body's able to do. Like our body is able to do some crazy things. And if we're so focused on just doing one thing with it, like you said, you end up getting burnt out. And I've seen that so many times with such good players too, is like just eventually you're just tired of doing the same thing for such a long period of time. So my opportunity to play some other sports, I think allowed me to be able to use my body in different ways. It allowed me to challenge myself in different ways, especially when it came to like training too. You start training in high school and in college and stuff. And instead of that mindset of just training to be a baseball player, I was always like, I need to train to be the best athlete I can be. I know that baseball, you're not running a lot, but I was always like, okay, I need to work on my running. This is one area where I have a weakness. And I remember having all these drills from football and from basketball to be able to help myself when it came to running and whatnot. And it's the same stuff, that applies to our game. And the more well-rounded you are in those aspects, that just makes you a better player out there on the field. We talk about a 5-tool player. It's great to have one tool, but if you can have as many tools as possible in the back of your bag and be able to pull those out at any time, that's what separates you a lot of times from other players.
There's no doubt. And like I see it again, I'll use my son as an example. I see he plays soccer, flag football, basketball. My daughter plays tennis, soccer, those 2 sports, and she dances and whatnot. And you just see you see the movements, and footwork is something that's so important. When we're teaching our kids my outfielders, I'm the one who trains with our outfielders in our team. And I'm like, dude, it's like catching a football. I literally stand there like, go out and catch a pass. It's just a glove. But I'm serious, because if not, you kind of become robotic and whatnot. But I love the fact that having kids play multiple sports is just so important. It exposes them to different sports. Number one, it helps them not burn out mentally. And again, every sport has different demands. And like, I'll give you an example, football to me is the ultimate team sport. Right. One thing goes wrong in that, the whole play is pretty much done. I played high school football. I was a quarterback. I played defense as well on both sides of the football. And, football was the ultimate team sport, in my opinion. Baseball teaches you that it's a team sport, but at the same time, it's a very lonely sport. It's a game of failure. Yeah. You can work on your hitting, you can work on your pitching, but when you go out there, you're on your own, man. Right. You go up to bat and you step into a batter's box by yourself. So, and again, that's where I go back to the mindset, because I see, and whether it's in sports, whether it's in business, you prepare, and I'm a big believer in preparation, because I think that's the ultimate confidence builder. But at the end of the day, you can prepare all you want, but if you don't believe in what you're preparing for or in yourself, then none of that matters. Yeah. That preparation really doesn't matter no more, because you're not believing in it. So,
I think specifically, football is, a lot of those, almost every single play is almost a one-on-one battle with somebody else. And in order for you to be able to beat that person standing in front of you, that's confidence right there. And you have to continue to do it throughout the course of the game. Sometimes with baseball, you may only get 4 at-bats. So in order for you to really be able to concentrate and figure out what you're trying to do, maybe playing football and doing it, lining up with somebody for however long, 24 minutes, whatever it may be in high school, that prepares you for whatever it may be in baseball, and I think that competition level, that focus of, okay, if this guy is bigger than me, if this guy might be better than me, how do I overcome that? And that's that confidence that you're talking about. And that only gets built through what you said, preparation, being prepared, understanding and believing in yourself, knowing that you went through all the drills that you need to do to prepare yourself and get ready for the moment. So I think about all those things and how much those come into play when it comes to baseball.
No doubt. And Xavier, Let me ask you a question. Obviously, the world is changing, right? COVID has changed the way we operate. Technology has changed the game of baseball. There's an evolution that's happening. If you're not evolving, you're pretty much, at least I say this in my company, if you're not evolving, you're dying. How much, when you look at today's game, right, and you're looking at the kids that are coming up from little league to the big leagues, right?
Right.
Where are you seeing? Is there anything specific that you're seeing that's a little bit drastically different that maybe kids and parents and coaches should be paying attention to? Or because in my opinion, the same principles are still here, right? You gotta work hard. You gotta have a good attitude. I'm a big believer. The one thing I love about sports, Xavier, is the one thing that it taught me is that I know that life is not about me. It's not about you. And it taught me that if you can play for the guy next to you, good things happen to you. I'll never forget, when I was in Dodge City Community College in Kansas, I played for a guy named Mike Jones, who's now the athletic director at Western Nebraska Community College. And Coach Jones was a sports psychologist. And I'll never, ever forget 2 things he told me. The one thing he told me that was crazy was, you look good striking out. I never heard a guy tell me that. I'm like, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, we just got to work on your swing. So he kind of rewired my brain. And he kept saying I was flat through the zone, but I needed to just work on, some physical aspects of my hitting, but I look good. But the most important thing he taught me was, he goes, Fernie, you start becoming a better hitter when you start playing for the guy who's hitting behind you, or when you start being a better team. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And I innocently asked him that. And he said, well, a perfect example, if there's a man on first and there's no outs, what's your job? And I said, well, I got to move the guy over. And he said, well, if you go up to bat with that mindset, that's when you hit the double. That's when you hit the home run. But if you go up to bat and you try to make the whole thing about you, and you try to, come off your shoes and hit the home run or hit the double, that's when you roll over and hit the ground ball double play.
Right.
And I started going up to bat, man, literally with a man on, second, no out, and I'm hitting third or fourth in JUCO, right? And I'm like, literally just trying, okay, I just kind of move the guy to third base, and the guy behind me will bring him in. Mm-hmm. And that's when I hit the double. And that year I ended up hitting north of 400, and I hit 13 home runs. The point is, I had arguably the best season of my life in college baseball, because it was so ingrained in me to play for the guy behind me. It wasn't the same for me. I'll be honest with you, when I got to FIU, and that's because of the environment that I was in. Mm-hmm. And I allowed that environment. It was such at that time, the environment wasn't so healthy and it was so strong that it was almost like it took over.
Yeah. Yeah.
But where I was at in JUCO, it was all about, man, like play for the guy behind you. And it just made you a better ball player. And I learned that in my life where I'm like, you know what? We own this insurance company. I'm one of the owners. Great. But nobody's bigger than the program. Just because I own this doesn't mean that I can go off and do whatever I want. No, I got to hold myself to a higher standard. Yeah. The responsibility I carry is higher. So talk to me a little bit about, about that part of your mindset in the game. And
yeah. I think, and this is one thing I tell a lot of guys, especially today, is like, and it even comes along the same with, being ready to understand that this isn't just about you. But one of the things that comes along with that is understanding your weaknesses, right? I think one thing as players, especially as men, like, we like our ego stroked and we like to work on the things that we're good at, right? We like to show those things off. But one of the biggest separators that I see in the game, all the way from little league to the big leagues, is the guys that continuously work on the things that they know they're not best at, the things that they're weak at, and getting those things and turning those weaknesses into strengths. The guys that I've seen most work on the things that, that they suck at, especially, and end up flipping those things around, those are the guys that separate themselves, because we can work on our strengths all day because those things make us feel good, right? If I know I'm good at pulling the ball out of the stadium, I can work on that all day, but that's not going to help me in the game, right? That's not going to help me when it comes to a 0-2 slider down and away and I got to put it in play to the right side. No. So for me, the things that you can work on that you haven't felt comfortable doing. And this comes along with that statement of making yourself feel uncomfortable, right? Being comfortable doing the uncomfortable things. So that's one thing that I really try to stress. And then another thing too, is asking questions. A lot of times today, especially with kids and even professional guys, having so many guys to go to, right? They feel like, okay, maybe I don't need to learn or pick my brain from somebody that's been doing it for a long period of time. So I always tell guys, ask questions, ask your coach, what is the one thing that he would like to see you do better? Because without knowing those things, you cannot get better. You cannot put yourself in a position to be the best version of yourself without getting it from somebody else, somebody that's watching you every single day, whether that be your parent, whether that be your coach, whether that be a mentor, whoever, your manager, whoever that may be. And that can go for any aspect in life. And that's something that I learned along the way. And I, for a while, it took me a while to say, okay, no, I'm going to ask for help, because we have trouble doing that a lot of times, especially as professional athletes, because we think we might know it all. So asking for help and trying to figure out what are the things that you can get better at from somebody else who sees you a lot, even that maybe you're the person in your locker right next to you. Hey, what do you think I've been doing here in this situation? Why do you think I've been struggling with guys in scoring position? Just asking, and you don't have to take everything from everybody, but maybe there's one little thing that you learn from asking somebody and you're able to apply it to your game or apply it to life. That's what's going to help you separate yourself, especially when we're talking about athletes.
I love the fact that you mentioned asking questions and coach. And I'll give you an example. That was one of the things that, again, talking about transition, that was one thing that I lost, right? Where I technically thought I lost. Well, you stop playing baseball and, your whole life, you kind of have a little bit of guidance, and I've always said, and Johnny's here, one of my producers, I always told Jay, I'm like, hey, I've never had a bad coach. I've had guys that taught me what to do, and I've had guys that taught me everything of what not to do, but they all taught me something.
Yeah.
But when I left the game, one of the things that I missed was having the ability to have somebody to reach out to and talk to. And, for that part of my life, that was more of an emotional standpoint and even guidance. And having coaches around is such a blessing. And asking questions, you're always, there's always somebody who's willing to help you out there, man. And whether it's a clubhouse guy, whether it's the manager, whether it's your hitting coach, having that guidance and building a relationship with these people is so detrimental to your career, because life is about relationships. but I saw it in my life how much I needed it. And I went out and hired 2 years ago, I hired a mental strength coach who his name is Lucas Jade, and he's an amazing guy. He wrote a book called Winning in the Dark. He works with several major league organizations, and he works with several CEOs and whatnot. He's an ex-athlete himself, but it's just amazing how that has also helped me repolish my mind and somebody who's holding me accountable. And we all need that, right, Xavier? Because we're all trying to get better, and we're all trying to succeed. And there's always somebody who can help, again, hold you accountable and help navigate where you want to go and coach you and teach you throughout the way. And I think sometimes that you're right. Ego plays a huge role, specifically in in a locker room. There's a lot of testosterone. There's a lot of, I'm the man and this is, it's my way. And, I'm making millions of dollars and you're a coach and I make more money than you. So it's my way. And which is another topic we can actually kind of dive into. It's like, you have college, you have universities now that are going to start paying athletes, and I think that's going to be a huge challenge for universities and for coaches, because if you got a freshman who's making $1 million a year, it's got to be hard when you're telling that kid something, and I don't want to mention universities or names, but I have somebody who's highly involved at a university who's already experienced hey, talk to my agent. And he's dealing with a freshman kid who hasn't caught a pass yet, but he's got a $200,000 contract. So that's also got to be changing, the way that we, sports operates and whatnot. And now you have Instagram and you got Facebook, and I love all that because that's how I get to promote the podcast and all that. But at the same time, it's worrisome when people are just making everything about them and players and the gram and about, and losing that commodity and team athletes. So are you seeing that happen more often in all, in all sports and at the major league level as well?
Yeah, I'm seeing it happen a lot. And that's actually why I started a company that I own called Extraordinary Athletes, is because the same things that I learned along the way about building a brand for yourself, using social media, using the relationships that you have, having the influence that you have and use it in a positive manner. Those are all the things that I wanted to give back to athletes, professional and non-professional, amateur. So I started that in 2019, and so we work individually with athletes. We also work with agencies, and I work with the St. Louis Cardinals and consulting them on their diversity and inclusion, which a lot of it is talking about branding and what a player can do with their influence and how it's going to be received positively and negatively. And one thing that I've learned, especially, you touched on the NIL stuff, is there's going to be so many athletes, like you said, bringing in, especially quick change. They're going to be able to make deals early and fast, but it's going to be the ones that understand the relationships around them and how they can use that to build a foundation for themselves and use it for their platform down the line after sports. And you talked about, coaches maybe not being able to get across to a player because they're making $1 million check and they're like, I don't need this coach, right? But it's going to be those athletes that understand that you're going to need every single person around you to help build that foundation for NIL, for things after professional sports, for things post-career, whatever it may be. Those will be the ones that end up winning. And it's about building a brand and a foundation around yourself that's transparent, that people can understand what you're doing. It's not going to be the athlete that, okay, let me get this quick check here. Let me get this quick check here. And those things end up being counterintuitive towards that athlete's brand. I don't understand. Okay, I look at this guy's Instagram. He's doing one thing and another thing that, are counter each other. If you can't understand a certain player's brand, or you can't understand an athlete's brand, or you can't understand an actual brand, in a consumer focus, then you don't want to be a part of that. So for athletes that understand that they need to be educated, that's where the problem lies, is the university is going to have to find a way to educate these athletes as quickly as possible and have them understand that it's not going to be about the quick dollar, or else you end up leaving yourself out to what can be a future of positivity for you. So that's, I see it now. I see it in professional sports. I see it in college. And what you said with social media, it can be such a positive thing and such a negative thing, but that's why athletes have to be taught how to use it. Just a normal person has to be taught how to use it in a positive manner. And that's what I'm all about. That's why I love doing what I do, is because, and I told you this too, is like from the jump, it was all about what's going to go on after baseball, right? My father-in-law, who's here with me now, he says, you played your 3 innings of your 9-inning life. What are you going to do with the next 6 innings?
That's amazing.
And that baseball part, that platform part, is those 3 innings that you can use for the next 6 innings. And that's what athletes have to understand. It's not about the moment, right? It's about exactly what this is, transition. How are you going to transition yourself out of doing what you're doing now to propel yourself for the future?
Xavier, and you put a smile on my face, man, because it's so powerful what you just said. And what your follow-up told you is amazing. And I say this all the time, like, it's like the average career in the big leagues is 3 years from what I've read. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I would say that's about it.
So let's say you're Jeter, you're A-Rod, you are the 1% of the 1% who plays, 12 years, and your career finishes at 38, 39, that, and which is like unheard of. Mm-hmm. You have the entire back end of your life still left to play.
Right.
So what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do when you're the 35-year-old, the 34-year-olds? That is what this whole thing is about. And it's because this game prepares you so much for life, and so much for life, for business, for family, for the hard moments, for the great moments.
Right.
And that is the beauty. And I don't, when you're 18, 19 years old and you're 20 and you're young and you're a prospect, I don't necessarily know that maybe you can buy into this unless you're someone's feeding it to you.
Right.
But here's what I will say. The person, the younger you can pick this up, the more the upside is so much brighter for you long term. Because if you're playing, one of the here's I'm gonna go back to where we've been very successful is in business, right? And the one thing that I can tell you is that the reason why we're so successful, our company, is I don't necessarily think that we're the smartest guys and we know everything, but it's because we're always playing the long game.
Yeah.
Every decision that we make is a long game. We're not looking for the short-term fix. We're not looking for the short-term coin. We want to make long-term decisions that allow us to take this organization to the next level.
Right.
And so every decision, when we do have short-term goals, right? But at the macro level, we're playing the long game. And when you do that in sports, and when you do that in your life, it changes the perspective and the awareness that you have as an individual, as an athlete. And what you did indirectly was you were playing the long game. You understood that, hey, God gave me this gift of being an athlete, and Lord knows that I want to do this. I fell in love with a bat and a ball, and we all do. Right. We all fall in love with that, right? You still love that game. The child in you is still there, but you understand that at some point the man upstairs says, "Okay, Xavier, this is it for you. We're going to pivot and we're going to go elsewhere. I got other plans for you," and that's the whole beauty. And that's the transition part. And the scary part is, and again, I say scary only because I know what it's like to be in that dark place and not understand that there's other things ahead of you. Right. It's the mindset that doesn't understand that transition will be there. Right. And it's just so important. Again, I go back, I always feel repetitive because it's the whole thing is about transition. The whole thing is about you understanding that there will be a point in your career where you're going to have to, the game will end and we're going to move elsewhere and we're going to take life in a different course. But you're a perfect example of that. And the fact that you're evolving, right? And opened up a company called Extraordinary Athletes, and understanding, okay, we're living in a new world, but how can I take my brand, right, this skill set, and use it for the better? And look, I'm a big advocate of athletes making money. Like, dude, you have a gift, right? You're a corporation. Your body is your company. That's your ink.
Mm-hmm.
So if God gave you a gift, you should maximize that gift on the business, platform as well. My concern is that when people are using that gift and not understanding that, parking your Ferraris in the front of your house and taking pictures of that's not going to do nothing for you, man. You're like, nobody cares,
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you said, is understanding that this ain't about you, right? This is like ultimately like the athletes that understand that this, if they're able to use NIL or whatever it may be for not just themselves, but to better the people around them, those will be the ones that start understanding, that perspective that you're talking about. And that was one thing that I was always kind of like, thinking about as far as the transition, right? You mentioned you had a buddy that tore his Achilles in a second round or something like that. I tore my Achilles last year. I still was trying to play last year. And that's when I said, okay. And you talk about a transition being scary. That's exactly what it is. Cause it's kind of scary because we don't know what's ahead, right? We don't know. We've known one thing for so long, but when you become uncomfortable and don't know, like that's when things get a little bit dicey. That's when things get scary. So for me, I had that situation happen last year and it was like, okay, guys are getting to the big leagues at 19, 20 years old. I'm 33. I got to start thinking about what's the next thing. And that's why the Extraordinary Athletes came along. That's why I started thinking about, okay, media, broadcasting, because I wanted to figure out the way that I can give everything that I learned back to everybody. And if that's through media, if that's through business, if that's through community, whatever that may be, that's what I'm all about, because I learned. And let me tell you how I learned it too. There's two big reasons how I learned it. There's a guy by the name of Oscar Taveras here. His patch is on this jersey up here, who passed away in 2014 with the Cardinals, a Dominican player. Passed away while I was in the Dominican playing winter ball. And I started to see the way the community celebrated him as a person, not as a player, but as a person. And I was like, man, he affected a whole country. That is unreal. And then fast forward 2 years later, I played for the Miami Marlins. Jose Fernandez passes away while I'm on the team, and he in a bad boating accident. And I said, I turned to my wife and I remember saying, this thing called life is way bigger than baseball. Is way bigger than baseball. And we don't know how much time we have. So that's what those two incidents changed my perspective on just this game, because it can be taken away like that. And that's the same for anything else, right? A business that we have, a community that we're a part of, and all of those things can be taken away just like that. NIL, playing as a college athlete, but what can't be taken away is how you affect everybody else around you. What mark did you leave around you while you were playing this game, while you're out of this game? What did you give to other people? And those were the things that really started changing my mind and how I can affect other people as a whole.
That's powerful, man. When you mentioned, obviously Tavares, I knew about his death, and what obviously that was national news, and obviously Jose Fernandez. I have a dear friend of mine, Danny Baez, who pitched in the big leagues for a long time, who was was good friends with Jose and whatnot. And it goes to show you, Xavier, that, and I think COVID has also proven this, right? Like, there are no guarantees in life, man. And the one thing I know for sure is that nothing is for sure. I'll share something, and I think Raul Ibanez would appreciate this. Raul told me something that this week, and I put it on my podcast today. I don't want to put his name. I wrote it down. He lived with Henry Dorfman, who wrote The Mental Game of Baseball. And Raul went through a point in his career where he went through some hard times, specifically after the death of his father. And he went to go live in Henry Dorfman's basement. And he wrote The Mental Game of Baseball. You know what his first words to Raul were? He looked at Raul and he said, Raul, I want you to know one thing. It's all bullshit. And Raul looked at him like saying, like, what are you saying? He's like, it's all bullshit. And what he was trying to tell him was, man, like, all the things that we stress in life, all the pressure that we put on ourselves, it's all BS, man.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta live this life with optimism. You gotta enjoy this. You know, he told him, you're a big leaguer. You get to play in front of 50,000 people. Just enjoy this moment because it's not going to be here forever. Stop worrying about what other people think about you. Stop worrying about whether the manager likes you or doesn't like you, whether you're going to hit 6-hole, first hole, 3-hole. All you can do is control who you are, control your game. And it's, at the end of the day, we realize that it is all BS. Xavier, at the end of the day, like the little things that we're stressing, for the most part, they don't really matter. What matters is, man, that smile that you have in your face now, that wife that you have, the kids that you have, the dad, the husband, you know? I'll share a story with you real quick that was powerful. One of the first things that Lucas made me do on week 1 that we worked together, and it took me probably 3 weeks to do this, and I did it around 2:30 in the morning, and I cried like a baby. He asked me to write my own eulogy. And I didn't understand how hard and powerful that would be and what that would do to my head and with my mind. So, yeah, man, when you take your life there's also so much freedom and liberty and power and strength in you because now you're free. And one of the things that I love about athletes, and I grew up and Michael Jordan to me was like he's the pinnacle, God, but it was like the closest thing to it.
Right.
And I was so attracted to how everything around them, it's like watching Barry Bonds hit a baseball too. Everything was slow. And I think the best players in the game of baseball or athletes or the best players in the game of life have the ability to slow this whole thing down.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, what does everybody say? Like, time is the one thing you don't get back, right? That's the one thing you can't earn is time. And the people that can slow it down and live in the moment. And that's what I strive to do because you mentioned family, right? Like, a lot of times we think I got 3 kids now. And a lot of times, you know, you're going through some tough times, especially when they're young and, but the biggest thing is everybody tells you, hey, enjoy this moment with the kids, right? Slow down the time. It goes by so fast. And just to be able to live in the moment, that's what I'm trying to continuously try to do. You know, put the phone down for a minute, you know, put the computer down, the TV, and just like live in the moment. And that's got to be one of the toughest things that we can, you know, try to do because everything is always grabbing at our time, at our attention. You know, everything is grabbing at us. So to be able to slow things down, man, that's one of the biggest things that I strive to do every day and enjoy the moment. You talked about the optimism and just know that, you know, a lot of those little things that you said, you know, those aren't worth worrying over. That's for sure.
They're not. And when you look at things, again, from a higher level, from a higher perspective and a higher sense of awareness, you realize, man, that we're all playing the long game here. You know, our goals is, you know, as a dad, we want to be a grandfather one day. We want to, you know, grow old with our wife. Well, we got to take care of ourselves, our emotional health, our physical health. Right. And I think we do that by slowing this whole thing down because I think stress kills people. And I think that we sometimes, you know, put ourselves in a position not to win the game. And we have to be careful with, again, I think the mind is so powerful. I heard a doctor today say that, you know, that all disease starts in the mind. And that's a powerful statement, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I don't know if that was kind of real factual, or maybe he was trying to say, if you can control this, you can control everything. Right.
Right.
And I think that we live in a world that's so fast and everything is about now. and our demands and Instagram. Again, I go back to like technology notifications. We find out, 30 years ago, maybe we would have found out about Afghanistan, in a different way. Now, it's 24 hours down your throat, in your face. Yeah. And my point is that maybe sometimes it's so important for us to guard our hearts and guard our mind and really understand that, hey, there's a lot of noise out there right now, but the only thing I can control is my mindset, my preparation, my character, and enjoy doing it. And I think it's important that we apply that to our lives. And I think it's important for athletes to apply that to their life. And the sooner they can do that, the better off they're going to be. So as we start to end this, I could go on and on with this all day. Give me one really fun fact about Xavier Scruggs. Give me one fun fact.
One fun fact about me. Oh, man.
Doesn't have to be about baseball.
Yeah, no, man. Fun fact, man. Well, I know the Miami people will love this. My wife is Cuban, so I'm a huge Cuban food guy. Like, I'll crush Cuban food at any time. Like, that's one thing I'll go to. We just had the masitas de puerco yesterday, so I was crushing that. So yeah, just, man, food is my thing, but especially Latin food. I got so many opportunities to go to, Colombia, Mexico, Dominican, so many places all over in so many Asian different countries. But man, the Latin food, that's where it's at right there.
That's amazing. So my business partner, Luis Gazatua, his family, maybe you ate there or not, when you're in Miami, he owns Sergio's restaurants. I don't know if you ever ate our Sergio's.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, according to him, they got the best croqueta in the country.
Oh, man, croquetas, man. I'll crush those every day too. No, man, that was the bad thing about playing in Miami is you get so much of that food, you start putting on that weight.
I know. And last thing, man, what advice would you give to children out there? The one, it doesn't have to be the one thing you learn, but what advice would you give to kids out there who are listening to this podcast, who are dreaming big to become, major leaguers, NFL players, NBA, whatever it is? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, just invest in yourself. I think,
Amen.
One of the things that is obviously the focus of this podcast is transition. And I feel like anytime you feel like you're in a moment of transition and there's some unclarity, you're not sure what's next, man, just find a way to invest in yourself. Find a way to just whatever it is that you're thinking about, go at it 150%. Don't hold anything back. Don't question anything. One thing my dad always told me is in the first moment that I got drafted, he said, don't have any regrets. And I think what he was really saying is invest everything that you have in yourself and don't leave anything to chance, man. And I especially learned it in 2020. We talk about the pandemic so much, is like, that's when I said, I don't know what's next. I tore the Achilles and I was like, I don't know what's next, but I'm just going to go invest in myself 110%. Whatever I'm thinking about doing, whether it be this broadcast thing, whether it be extraordinary athletes, I'm going at it and I'm not stopping. And it's paid its dividends, but ultimately that's what the transition is about, man. Just investing in yourself. And there's going to be so many times where there's unclarity. Just go get it. Just go get it. Don't even ask any questions. Go get it.
Well, that's amazing, man. I appreciate you coming on. I hope we can do this again, maybe in the future, touch base again. I mean, I could go on and on with this. I wish you nothing but the best of luck, and I'll be following you. Are you ever coming down to Miami again? Are you ever down to South Florida?
I'll be down there. Yeah, I gotta. I do a lot of work in West Palm Beach with the Cardinals. Okay, at their spring training facility, and then my wife's family is in West Palm. So
amazing. I would love to have you come by the office, maybe speak to our employees and share your story. It's inspiring, and I wish you nothing but the best and the best of luck, man. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you guys. You guys are doing awesome stuff.
Xavier, hold on one.
Yeah.